Hello, and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator, turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today is Catherine Trimboli. Catherine is a retired law enforcement captain, a boss lady, and a personal protector concierge. As a retired law enforcement captain with over 30 years of experience, Catherine currently channels her expertise into a personal protection business aimed at giving her high-level female clients peace of mind. She focuses on providing discreet, high-level security services tailored specifically to women and children. Catherine taught defense tactics for many years at the Milwaukee County Training Academy, and she has a deep understanding and commitment to confidentiality and personalized safety planning. Catherine offers practical solutions to help individuals feel empowered, safe, and secure in their daily lives. Her mission is to deliver trusted protection with integrity and dedication. And Catherine also runs the Milwaukee County Shop with a Cop, which is a not-for-profit organization. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited. I've never talked to someone like you on the podcast before. So I am really excited for this conversation, and especially because at the time we're recording this, it's October, which is Domestic Violence Month, and I think the tips that you're going to share here, based on our knowing each other in conversation, are going to be invaluable for so many people. But before we get into that, I want to wind it back and ask, can you tell me a little bit about your background in law enforcement and how it led you into this personal safety and protection gig?
Sure. I started in law enforcement right out of high school. Didn't think that that's where I was going to go in life. I knew that I always wanted to do something to help people, but it was a series of things that occurred, and I ended up starting at a very young age. And as I went through, there were times when I was the only female working. I remember on the freeway on third shift a couple of times when I was a deputy that I was the only female working, and I was like, this is interesting. But as time has evolved, a lot more females are joining law enforcement, which is awesome. So I just retired a couple months ago, and I knew that there was something more. I could feel that there was something that I wanted to do that was pulling me to helping. I have a servant leadership, persona anyway, and I've always loved to serve and help people. So I felt like it kept pulling me to this. I knew that I wanted to help women because I would talk to a lot of the women and ladies that I would come in contact with, whether they were on the job or off the job. And sometimes like the confidence would be lacking, or they didn't have the understanding or the wherewithal of how to, simple things that they could do to protect themselves or to, carry on in their daily lives at a higher level and have a peace of mind. So I really had a passion and drive for helping people, and I was a law enforcement trainer for many years and doing different was called principles of subject control, which is basically defense tactics and some communication. And I think all of that couples into giving women and empowering women, giving them the knowledge and tools that they need that can really transform their confidence and their sense of well-being.
That's awesome. And I know that, whether a woman is married, single, divorced, doesn't really make any difference. If you're in a bad situation, you're in a bad situation. And personally, and I know I may get a lot of flack for this, but I don't care what you see in the movies about this little tiny petite little woman who takes out like a dozen big burly guys. In real life, that does not happen, and it's certainly not going to happen for me. I'm like, you can't tell, but I'm not very big. And so if somebody is, if there's a woman and she's worried about her personal safety, her protection, what realistically can she and should she do to make sure that she is safe, that she doesn't get in that bad situation? Because the chances of her actually taking out the dozen burly guys is not good.
Right. I mean, I think simple everyday things, like, it's all about having so everyone has some type of some level of self-awareness, right? So, you can feel things that are going on around you, and you have an awareness of what's happening, right? In law enforcement, we have something called situational awareness, and a lot of other, areas use it too, the term, but it basically is observing and being present, but observing, and then taking from that observation and making a decision and then making a proper action basically, right? So we always say head on a swivel. Like you will notice that a lot of law enforcement or military, but a lot of law enforcement, they'll if you're having a conversation with somebody, they'll be looking around the room. And it's not because they're not listening to you. They're scanning the room. They're checking to see who's walking in, like they're taking inventory, so to speak, right? But in everyday lives, like citizens can do that easily where they, just take a quick glance, see what's going on, who's there, what if something seems out of place or doesn't seem right, and listen to your instincts. Like the little hairs on the back of your head stand up, or you get that little flip in your gut where like something is not right here. We, I think, take for granted our intuition. And honestly, like that is like when you're really in tune with your intuition, you're like, okay, something didn't seem right about that. It's like the I'm a good judge of character kind of thing, right? Like it's being able to, all right, take that. And then a lot of times it's like how you stand, how you carry yourself. If you walk into a room confident or you're walking down the street by yourself and you look confident and your head's not in your phone and you don't look like you're lost, a lot of times people are going to leave you alone.
Okay, so there's a lot there to unpack. I want to dive into the whole
Yeah.
idea of situational awareness. What are you looking for? Like I can look around the room and like I'm still seeing what I'm like I'm what am I s- what will should I be paying attention to that might tip me off as, to there's a problem here or something's not right. I mean, it's one thing to have the gut feeling, it's another thing to be able to look at something and know, "Oh yeah, that's off."
Right. I mean, I think sometimes situational awareness too is just you are seeing like, oh, that person walked in the room. Oh, that's a bright outfit. So if something happens, right? And that person did it, they're like, "Yeah, I remember seeing a guy walk in, he had a bright orange shirt on, and he had a such and such baseball cap on," things like that, right? They say, "Be a good witness." Like, that's a term we've used too, be a good witness. So, like, scanning the room if we're scanning the room for threats, that's a different level, right? But just
Uh-huh.
being aware and seeing being observant, but again, to answer your question on the side of if there something doesn't feel right, what are we looking for? It depends where you are. Let's say you're in a restaurant and somebody walks in and something doesn't seem right, right? Somebody is a little like agitated or they seem like real nervous or something like that. We don't know what's going to happen, but at least you can keep an eye on it and see. I mean, it could be that they're just, they're there and looking for somebody that, shouldn't be there or something like that.
Yeah. I just that brings to mind a situation I got myself in back in the day when I was young and stupid. So I was traveling all around the world by myself because, I was 21 and I could do that, right? Which retrospectively might not have been the best idea, but I was doing it anyway. And so I was in a European country, I won't get into which one, and I this was back in the day when you actually could meet people on the street, right? So I was walking around, some guy comes up, we start chatting, we go for a coffee. I'm watching him drink the coffee and his hand is going like this, and
Mm,
there's all of a sudden there's this intensity about him, and like you said, to your point, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and at least because I was a woman traveling alone, I had enough sense to know, pay attention. And I'm like, okay, we got to ditch this guy because whatever is going on here isn't good. When I ultimately was able to lose him in a crowd or something, which he wasn't happy about, but I was thrilled. So things like that. What if a woman is out on a date with some guy or she's alone with a person that she doesn't know, other than having, like the shaky coffee because he can't keep his hand still? um What should she be looking for? What are the tells?
Well, I think first, if they're going somewhere that, let's say a first date, right?
Mhm.
They're going somewhere they haven't been before or with somebody they haven't been before. I always say, let somebody know, let them know where you are. And you might even need like the keyword if you're trying to get out of that date where you run to the bathroom and you quick text them something and then they call and act like there's an emergency so you can leave the situation, right? Like you can tell a friend, call me and pretend like whatever. Somebody got into a car accident and be like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I got to go. It was great to meet you." Like and fly out of there, right? But if you set some expectations or boundaries with this person, and you there's, if they're saying things that trigger you the wrong way or that you don't like or that you don't care for, you could say, I would prefer that, I don't like that type of talk, or I don't like you talking to me that way, such, whatever term you use. And then if they continue, there's always, you can always get up and leave, right? There's always a way out. But things like that. Or if they're starting to act a little nervous or weird, if God forbid you're at their house or you go back to their place and you really don't know them and they're making drinks, like, if you're unsure, like, do you want to really have drinks with this person or take drinks from them? So it's little things like that that I think, we just become more aware of, like, have taking the assessment and saying, okay, let's, you know, let's let's think about this a little bit further, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the answer is don't put yourself in bad positions to begin with, right? But I like your
Yeah,
idea of, if you are going out with somebody you don't know really well, to have a friend tipped off. This is where I'm going. This is who I'm going with. Call me at this time, or you can text them in the bathroom and say, hey, call me because I'm in a bad spot.
right. I mean, some people would just say, "I'm leaving," or they'd say they're going to go to the bathroom and they'll just leave, which is an option too.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
little bit rude, but it's better
yes,
than
correct.
being
Correct.
taken
But I
advantage of or
mean,
beat up or something.
sometimes they don't always reach to that level. It's just the being observant, being present, understanding what's happening, things like that.
Tell me, like, because a lot of women there, I deal with a lot of people going through divorce, obviously, and there are certain times that tend to be more volatile than others, like in the beginning, and when you're having the first conversation of I want a divorce, right? If
Right.
somebody's in that situation where they're about to tell their spouse they want a divorce and they're not sure of what the reaction's going to be, and they're worried that maybe it could go south on them, what should they do? Like, do they have their phone programmed for 911? Do they have, like, what do they do to make sure that if things do go badly, they can be safe?
Well, again, it's like having a buddy, right? Like letting somebody know, listen, this is what I'm going to do. um if the relationship up until then you didn't have that feeling that you needed somebody there to tell
Mhm.
them, then okay, but still let one of your friends or somebody that you confide in know, this is what I'm going to do, and if it goes bad, I may be calling you. For sure the phone, but honestly our phones are so great now, all you have to do is like press and hold one of the side buttons. I'm sure we've all done it accidentally, and it calls 911, right? um, but also just making sure you have things in place, or a, so to speak, an out where if something does go bad, you can leave. And if it gets that bad, you could always call the police and say, look, this is what
Yeah.
happened, you know. Um, but I mean, I think for individuals, I think they don't think about like how they can enhance their safety is sometimes just doing an assessment of your house, right? Like look around, say, okay, in after they get to the next step of after they tell them, and then it's a volatile or it's an unpredictable thing, right? And they're like, "Now, I don't know if this guy's going to come over. I already changed the locks." Okay, so do your doors and your windows lock? Is it well lit? Do your motion lights work? Do you have cameras? And is it worth investing in them? Does your Ring doorbell work? And is it up to date, like where it's recording? Like some of them will work where it'll give you a alert when someone's at your door, but
Uh-huh.
if it's not updated or it's not connected to your internet the right way, it won't continue to record. And then that, you might want that, you might need that video at some point, right? So, um, when you're driving, you take the same route every day? Do you only know one way to and from, let's say, work or your children's school or wherever you're going? Because first, there always should be 2 or 3 routes that you do know, but also because then you're unpredictable. You don't wanna be predictable, right? They say if it's predictable, it's preventable. So, go
Ooh,
I
I like that.
think, Gordon Graham Gordon Graham used to say that. But, um, you're taking the same route every day, someone's gonna know where to find you at what time, right? But also, it's good to have it in case of emergency, not your emergency. Let's say there's a crash or there's a fire or something's going on. We used to do on the freeway, we would always have traffic. When I worked on the freeway as a deputy, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as a captain, we would have dignitary escorts, right? So dignitary protection, the president, vice president, somebody would come in and we would have all these traffic closures, right? Or even for festivals, like when there's a big festival going on, we would close the freeways and the ramps going into downtown. Um, in doing that, we would have the cones and the squad cars set out, and so people can't get off on that ramp. And it was like clockwork. We would always have at least 3 or 4 people stop and say, "This is the only way I know how to go." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry, but you can't go this way. Keep going. You can get off on the next exit and then figure your way around." Or someone would say, "I have to go this way." And I'm like, "But it's closed down." And at the time, the officers don't have the time or they can't leave their post to sit with you and give you directions on where you're going. You know what I mean? So it's just like having it pre-programmed in your mind, like having a plan of, oh, I think this way I'm going to take this route, and this way I might take this route. Well, sometimes you
Mhm.
might be at a restaurant or a coffee shop that you've never seen before that you want to.
Yeah. But I love that. I mean, honestly, it's something that I didn't think about to just have to not always do the same thing the same way at the same time. But you brought up something that's really interesting. Like if you're picking up your kids from school, that you don't always take the same road at the same time. What should you be teaching your children, like married, single, divorced, doesn't matter. What kinds of things should you be teaching your children to help them enhance their own personal safety?
So with children, there's a balance between awareness and empowerment, right? So I always like to focus on the positive anyway, but with children, it's even easier because then I think they feel like it's a fun thing and you can make it fun. You can make it a game. Let's say you're in the house and you want to teach them a plan. I mean, I remember years ago and working with the fire department, a lot of them they do stuff where, okay, this is the route that we're going to take, or this is what we're going to do if there's a fire, right? You can do
Hmm.
the same concept with if there's an emergency, whatever that emergency will be, even if it's somebody trying to get in the house, right? So you're teaching them skills, right? And if you tell them, hey, I'm teaching you some skills, and you being protected or you having more skills is going to keep everybody safer and we're going to be able to have more fun, right? So you can turn it into a game. And I think that like if you honestly, that's like a lot of role playing, right? So you can find, and I'm sure, you know, you can go onto the internet or even chat GPT and find like a role play game to teach my kids how to, get out of the house. And you can turn it into a fun game night. And then afterwards have like ice cream or something. But I mean, just in general, for teaching kids, I think it's important for them to understand that it's important to have a plan, right? And to have different routes and to learn different things because it's expanding their skill set. And communication is definitely key, but I think what we call in law enforcement, we say having a pre-planned practice response. It's a tongue twister, but it's something that we always remembered, right? Pre-planned practice response. Sure enough, you're planning and you practice it a few times, and now it starts to become easy and natural for you.
But how about that, what you just said, that balance between, um, you know, practice and safety and empowerment, because little kids, like depending on their age, they're like, yeah, I'm Superman. You don't want your 6-year-old trying to take down, an adult
Right.
when you know that's not going to go well because the 6-year-old doesn't have the skill. So how do you empower them without going so far that they think they're Superman?
I think teaching them when they're outside of the house, like making sure they understand the importance of keeping close to trusted adults. There's safety in numbers, staying with somebody else all the time, right? Having a buddy,
Hmm.
especially at a younger age, having a buddy or two, safety in numbers, staying close to trusted adults, being aware of their surroundings, teaching them like to be aware, right? Because a lot of the kids will be like, oh my God, did you see so and so? And they were like, no. Like, and they were standing right next to them, right? Because they're so in their little, like they were having so much
Yeah.
fun. They were in their own little world, which is great. But like teaching them that being aware of their surroundings, that it's a skill and they're like learning, you're learning something. And this is great because now it's going to be able to help you, right? And then teaching them what to do if they don't feel comfortable, right? Making sure you have points there on what to do if they don't feel comfortable. If you we the term see if you see something, say something. So they could, right? They see something, they're like, oh, that person is that look at that the guy's over here, he looks weird, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
But what happens if, like, what should you tell your kids to do? Say, let's say that they're in a situation and they see something that they think is a little bit off. What kinds of steps should they follow? Because they're little people, right? So they don't have the strength and the power that an adult does. What kinds of safety steps should they take to get out of a difficult situation?
I would say first and foremost, leaving and finding a trusted adult, right? Going straight to a trusted adult or going into the building. Let's say they're at school in recess and
Hmm.
they see something weird, grab their friend, say, hey, let's go over to Mrs. So and so, the teacher, to let them know what's going on or to go inside where it's safe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And but you also mentioned communication. What role does communication play in personal safety?
I feel I've always been a firm believer that communication, but like transparency and being very clear and having clear set goals and expectations, like letting them know, say, hey, and making it the communication with children, then next thing you know, it's in everyday conversations, right? You pick them up from school and, hey, how was school? Good. No, it's like engaging, right? And asking engaging questions and then saying, hey, as you're driving out of the parking lot, hey, if somebody came up to you here, what would you do? And using that, just little tidbits, and they build on each other. And then next thing you know, you have a skill set for them that they didn't even realize that they learned or they built up, and you feel better and you have a an enhanced peace of mind because you realize that I just taught my kid like 5 skills and they didn't even check it. They didn't even get that.
Yeah, they didn't even realize I was teaching them, which is
Right.
which is beautiful, especially once they get to a certain age and they're just like, "Mom," or
Right.
whatever.
I
But
know what to do.
what
Right.
speaking of age, how old should they be when you start to teach them things like this? What do you think?
I mean, I think with the games, like you could start teaching them as soon as they get an understanding of, that they're not supposed to answer the door when, the doorbell rings and you don't know who's coming over. And you know what I mean? Like whether that's 3 for some kids and or whether it's 5, 6, or 7 for others, I think the parent is the best gauge of you know, the ability. But I think honestly, starting the role playing game, the games at such a young age, it's really teaching them the importance of being safe and not answering the door when you don't know who's coming to the door. I mean, I don't know how many people come to the door, ring people's doorbells anymore, or they look on the phone and they're like, oh, look who so the UPS man's at the door, Amazon's at the door.
Yeah, yeah.
Even then, even if Amazon comes to the door, the kid shouldn't be answering the door. Let them drop off the package, let them leave because you never know.
Yeah, that's a good
The
point.
Amazon driver is either, you know? And I'm not saying Amazon hires bad people. I'm
Eh,
just saying it's just something to keep in mind.
yeah, that makes total sense. We're not dissing any kind of drivers or what have
Correct.
you, but and it depends too. I mean, if mom and dad are home, it's different. Or but if you're all by yourself, that you're right, and you're a little person, you shouldn't just be like hanging out in the doorway with the, you know, delivery man. Um,
Right.
although some of them can be pretty cool, but
Yes,
I've
very
seen
much
the
so.
videos on social media, and some of them do really
Yes.
fun things.
So
But
cool and so fun. Or if they're like gonna go dance with them. Well, if your parents are home, hey, go have at it.
yeah, let's switch gears a little bit and go back to women. Let's say there's a woman who's traveling alone, right?
Okay.
Whatever reason, what kinds of things should she be doing and be aware of? Because let's say she's a, a professional speaker, or she's going to a business conference or whatever. So she's flying to a new city, doesn't know the airport, doesn't know the city, has to go from airport to hotel to whatever, maybe going through some bad neighborhoods. Do you have any tips for women in that circumstance?
I would definitely say they should have a check-in person, like the kids have the buddy, right? And let someone know when you leave and when you get there, right? First and foremost. And even in the Uber or whatever car service they're taking, Uber, Lyft, or however they're getting to their destination, be on the phone and speak as if, oh yeah, okay, so I'll meet you at the hotel, even if they're in a different state, right? Person doesn't have to know that because you never know. You just want to be careful. You got to err on the side of caution, right? But I think when traveling alone anyway, like if you're driving, parking in a well-lit area, you get to pick your parking spot. You want to be as close to the door as possible, right? Or, you drive up to the hotel, you park your car at the little valet area, you run in, you check in, you ask them what's the best place to park, what have you. I mean, they might even have somebody there that would, if you felt uncomfortable, that could come out, park your car for you, come out there, walk you in. You know, you will never know if you don't ask, right? I always say, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So people are more willing to help than we think, right? But I think that again, just being aware of your surroundings, looking around, if you're traveling in an Uber, not keeping your head down in the phone, and then now you didn't even see what route they took. Like you could have passed some places that at least you have landmarks. And when you're going out the next day, you're like, oh yeah, I remember passing this place and I saw that it was near the convention center or what have you, right? And I think trusting your intuition, like really being aware, self-aware, being observant, but trusting your instincts. And I think that, a lot of that just kind of comes together.
Yeah, that that makes a lot of sense. So, and if somebody is traveling as a woman alone, should they always have that, like somebody who knows where they're going, knows where they're staying, do you have that person at home? And if that person at home thinks something's wrong, what do they do?
Yeah, I mean, if they feel uncomfortable or they know, if you're talking to somebody and something happens, right? And they know, let's say I call you and you hear something on my end of the phone, but you know where I'm either going to, that I got on the Uber at destination A and then I'm going to destination B. There's nothing wrong with calling that police department saying, "Hey, can you send a squad just to do a check to make sure she's okay?" Maybe the phone just dropped, but it didn't sound right and there was a little bit of whatever in the background. 9 out of 10, they'll depending on the city or the agency, if they're not super busy, but
Right.
9 out of 10 times they'll send someone out just to check, to do a welfare check.
Okay, so let's get this sort of real and for a moment. Do you have any examples or stories of people who were able to enhance their personal safety and therefore increase their peace of mind by taking some simple steps?
Actually, yeah, I mean, the one thing that I didn't mention or that we didn't get to yet was one of the things with, let's say you're going through a divorce, right? And it's
Hmm.
unpredictable and you're unsure what's happening. You know, we went over like the assessment of the house and the home, but what about work? Right? So
Mm.
you might not want to share. at work what's going on at home. Most people don't, understandably so. But it's really, really recommended and it's really good to have a supervisor or somebody at a higher level that you can confide in, be completely transparent, say, look, I don't know what's going on. It's a little unpredictable. Some days he's up, some days he's down, whatever the case may be. Communicate what's happened, any things like if there was any threats, things like that. Then that way, and you can share a picture with them. Then that way they have a plan in place in case something happens, right? We had an employee at work who was going through an unpredictable divorce, and they shared with their supervisor what happened. They would walk to the car, but they just, you know, at in law enforcement agencies, you work every shift. And then in the wintertime, like every shift has darkness in it. You're going to work, but at first shift, it's dark outside. You're you're coming home from work on second shift, it's dark outside. You know what I mean? On third shift, it's always dark outside.
Yeah.
So, because with the sun going down and what have you, but with that, they have to walk to their car. They didn't feel comfortable. If they didn't have somebody of like they could ask their friends, hey, can you? They get done at different times. Let's say they can ask a coworker, can you walk with me to my car? So they had they let their supervisor know. We had a plan in place. They had like a bad feeling that something was going on, kept getting calls, whatever the case may be. Another employee walked the person to their car. Sure enough, in the parking garage was the husband was waiting, or the ex-husband was waiting. So because there was two of them, and the person that was with him was like, "Listen, you got to go. Like, do not bring your nonsense, your BS here. Like, you got to go." And it squashed the situation. He left, and who knows what he was going to do if he just want to talk to you. I'm sorry, I love you, or if it's he wants to get into a fight. But once he was confronted, he left. But it was great because I think that if that employee wouldn't have said anything at work and then didn't have that plan in place and those steps in place, when they got out to the car, who knows what would happen, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Let's say you're in a situation, let's say that woman had been alone. She didn't have the coworker, and there's ex-husband, and they get into a big fight. I want you to share because I know you and I have talked offline too, and the tip from being in grade school, what you do to somebody that even a woman can bring a guy down. Like I
uh,
thought this was brilliant.
so I'm only 5'1", and when I would have to detain or arrest some of the individuals that I came in contact with, I would say 95% of them were taller than me. So um, there was a time, or in a situation like this, if let's say that woman gets into a physical altercation, and the person's taller than them, one way to bring them down to your level is, and it sounds so like juvenile, like because we were kids when we did this, is you take your knee and you hit the back of their knee, which kind of makes them. You remember doing that?
Yep.
I want to say kick, but kick is a bad word because you're using your knee. So you're taking your knee to the back of their knee, and then it breaks them down. And then, at that point, if they're in a physical altercation, my next knee is going into their groin area, and I mean, you're gonna have to hit with some power. You're gonna have to you know, really do some strikes, and then as soon as you can, get away, if your phone's in your hand, you can call for help and you can run back into the building. But I think that using something as simple as knocking your knee into their knee and bringing them down to your level is an easy enough, you know,
Yeah,
start.
that makes total sense. And it's because, like, realistically, Hollywood aside, you're not going to bring them down and beat them up and they're going to be laying unconscious on the ground. Like the chances of that happening are really, really small. So it's like bring them down and run for crying out loud.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
get out of the bad situation. That's what I was always taught. It's like A, try not to put yourself in the position in the first place. And B, if something happens and you're in a bad spot, get out. Don't try to fight your way out. Just run your way out if you can.
And I think too, like if people are traveling alone or walking and they don't feel uncomfortable, I think it's always good. I know none of us don't even use keys anymore, right? Because our cars are have key fobs. But finding a key, grabbing your keychain and like holding your key in your hand like this or like this in a situation where if you have to use it, it's ready for you, right?
Yeah,
I
that
mean, we
makes
hope you don't have to get to that point, but at least you
right. I was always taught, and thank God I've never had to use it, but that you lace your keys through your fingers and you hold it like this. And that, I mean, because the point is you just want to get that surprise hit and then run, right? And the other thing is too, not to be afraid to to hit somebody, to get
right.
out of the situation, because especially as women, like to hit somebody is kind of like, I don't know if I can. But what would you say to women, like what can they put in their head so they've got the key and they don't have a problem, like going for the eye or going for the throat or something, just to get out of there? Like, how do they get over their natural resistance of not wanting to hurt somebody?
Well, they have to understand that their safety and their well-being is worth it. That I mean, they it's a priority. It's a non-negotiable, it's a priority. It's worth it. And you might have to practice a few like some people have never been into a fight before. And I'm not saying go get in a fight, but you might just have to practice a few, if somebody was to come, I would do this or I would do that, because we say pre-plan practice response, right? If you are continuing, you practice a certain thing each way, then it starts to become a muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes natural for you. And I understand you're not going out there to with the intent of trying to hurt somebody, but if it's them or you, it's you. You're the priority.
Yeah, and it's interesting because most women I know will have no problem going for the jugular if you try to hurt my kid. But when it's you're trying to hurt me, there's a hesitation.
Yeah, I honestly think that because women take care of so many others all the time, that they're always like, it's the motherly thing. I'm going to take care of this person. I'm going to take care of this person. Even like their health. You think about, they're always taking care of everyone else. And then next thing you know, they're exhausted. And it's like, there's got to be that balance, but not to get off the rails. But understanding that, like, you should be treating your well being, your peace of mind, and your safety as if it was your child's or your best friends or your mom's or your grandparents, because you are really, 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 really worth it. And what would you do to ensure the safety and protection of all those people I just named? You would do anything, right? So you really do deserve it and you are worth it.
I
That's
love
what I would tell women.
I love that, and I think that's a perfect place to just wrap this up. Um, Thank you so much for all these tips. This has been so helpful and so instrumental. And, hopefully we all keep ourselves safe and we're never in that situation. But sometimes bad things happen, and I love your perspective of, how did you put it again? Plan, practice, make a
Pre-planned, practiced response.
Yes, that thing. I think that, there's a lot of sense to that, and hopefully you never need it. But if you do need it, you have something to fall back on. So thank you so much for this conversation. If people want to learn more about you, or they need, they want more tips, or they need personal protection, where can they find you? Where's the best place to get you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and it's under my name, Catherine Trimboli.
Perfect. Catherine, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank
And
you so much for having me. And I hope that, just a few of the tips can help build on some skills and awareness and peace of mind for some people.
yeah, and if nothing else, it will help build that confidence that prevents bad things from happening in the first place.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And for those of you out there who are listening or who are watching, if you like today's episode, if you want more of this kind of content, please do me a big favor. Give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and I look forward to talking with you again next time.
Bye bye.